Hello, and welcome to another session in our Lead Forensics webinar series. I am delighted to be joined today by Giulio Segantini from Underdog Sales. Giulio is the self-proclaimed weirdest sales trainer and one of the most straight-talking, charismatic, insightful, and inspiring sales trainers that I've ever had the pleasure to meet. And it isn't just me who thinks so. Giulio has a social following of nearly 250,000 salespeople who are engaging daily with his content, and he has personally coached over 420 sales individuals. And the reason that we wanted Giulio on the webinar today is in Lead Forensics, we are all about empowering sales teams and the SDRs to drive more revenue from their websites by identifying, connecting, and converting unknown website visitors. So the SDR in particular is the unsung hero within many of our customer organizations. They're the one who leverages the data, and we wanted to give back to them. We wanted to add some value to our customers and our customers of the future by talking to Giulio today. So it's going to be a really great session. We are going to cover the ongoing topic, the burning topic of, is cold calling dead? Well, of course it isn't. And that's why we're having this conversation. And we'll be getting Giulio's advice on cold calling, how it's going to work in future, effective strategies to build pipeline beyond 2026, talking about how prospecting has changed, what the SDR playbook looks like for next year, and how to convert cold leads into pipeline. So that was a long intro. Welcome, Giulio. I'm so delighted that we finally got you on and we can start this conversation.
I'm happy to be back. Well, look,
Great.
I mean, you kind of already gave away the answer, though, right? We should have pretended for a second that we are going to argue cold calling is dead, right? But I think it's a hot topic for everyone, and it's something that we want to cover quite a lot. So, I see this a lot on social media. Like either people are arguing this, people are arguing this, and so I think it's going to be quite interesting to discuss that a bit more today.
No, definitely. So, your view then, is it dead? Is it dead?
So look, there's one thing it's got to be clear for I think to people is that cold calling isn't easy, right? And things are changing. So I think we're not going to see a death of cold calling just yet. It might happen. We'll talk about it later. But obviously, the situation has evolved drastically, I think, and I think we used to see this spray and pray approach. I think when I was a young salesperson, probably when you were as well, you would have these ideas like you got a list, you call. I know some people that used to call for the yellow paper, right? Like literally.
Which is absolutely a thing, yeah.
But step by step, just going through it. So of course, I don't think that's changed. I think that's massively changed, sorry. And we're going to see less and less of that. But also, I think let's talk about the effectiveness, right? Which is what I think is burning question in people's heads. And I think we can argue quite simply that there's a decline in how easy it is and how effective it would have been. And I think there was an interesting, some statistics. I think Cogniz published something about the numbers, and it was nonsense. Clearly, obviously, Cogniz sells mobile numbers. So, it's more effective than ever. I was like, guys, it's just not true. People don't pick up their phone as much from unknown numbers. There's a lot better spam filters. You have even some AI tools now. And also, people are just more reluctant to shitty outreach. Hello, my name is, I'm calling you because we are the best at whatever. It just doesn't work that much anymore.
Yeah. And do you think, when you think of declining effectiveness, is it, well, it's just declining in the old way of doing things the key word is cold. Of course, if you have a list of records of organizations who, might have an interest in working with you and you just cold call that, of course it's going to be ineffective because there is so much data out there about those businesses that you can use to transform your call from being that hi, you don't know me, but I think, to actually, we know this about you and here's the reason why. And those buyers or those leads you might be calling have potentially had other behaviors or left signs that mean that
Mm-hmm.
that call becomes effective, or
Mm-hmm.
just that you are better prepared in terms of like, this is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely ICP. Like, I've done
Mm-hmm.
all my research. They don't use
Mm-hmm.
us. They don't use
Mm-hmm.
a competitor. This is valuable as a call for them. And I think that's the
Absolutely.
difference, isn't it? Like, we can't just pick up the phone and work through a list. It's got to be considered.
I mean, look, you can, but be prepared to the fact that it's going to be horrible. It's going to be way, way
Yes.
harder than it could be. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what do you think that sales leaders and SDRs, seasoned SDRs, new SDRs, what do you think they misunderstand about cold calling today?
I think, look, we got to talk a little bit about how the role of the SDR is going to be looking, and I think there's just sometimes some ridiculous thing. Oh, AI SDRs or SDR's role is going to be dead, and like even if that were the case, there would still be an entry level sales position. Like no one is going to be starting their career without without sales experience and not knowing what to do. I think it's just the difference that the boiler style Richie spray and pray approach is just not what it's going to be effective in the future. And I think we'll talk about this a bit more. I do think that lower level SDRs will be dead. And what I mean by this is like if your service or product isn't worth enough money, it'll be automated. Simple. It's a bit like customer service. Customer service will disappear for low level products and it's just going to be for high ticket value items, basically.
Yeah. So stuff where there's a more consultative approach required, and building an understanding of how you get value and use that product will always need humans um,
Exactly.
to
Correct.
do that deal. Okay. And do you see prospecting then making a major shift in terms of how SDRs operate? So you said, okay, lower level SDRs, well, they still exist
Mm-hmm.
today. Like when
Mm-hmm.
an SDR comes in and they start their day and they think about how they're going to build pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different to what it was 10 years ago?
So look, I think this we can move to the how the landscape of prospecting is overall changing. I think the major thing that we want to think about, obviously, is the elephant in the room, which is the level of AI and tech that it's coming up. And when I say cold calling is not as effective as it was before, I would say that in a term of if you're gonna do like a manual dialing or maybe calling from your phone or whatever, like that type of like for a list, etc. But these days, like you've got a bunch of ways to be calling people that are relevant, at least. Like I literally remember my first sales job would be like call them. If they're not relevant, well, disqualify them on the phone. You'll find out, which is a huge waste of time, right? And also it feeds into negative because you get rejected more. You don't want to do it as much, etc. So I think these days, like the AI in tech is really built around how can we cut all the BS tasks, and this is from having a good list to calling for that list. And that's the first big thing that as SDR, like I actually recommend to some of my like a bunch of the people in my community, my academy, online, like even invest in some of these tools yourself. Buy data, buy like a dialer, get yourself those things that will make your life a little bit simpler.
And I think you're that like what we're not saying, and I believe you're not saying this because is don't procrastinate about picking up the phone to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you've got like you can't nothing is gonna you're never gonna have a situation where everything is gonna be perfect for a call.
Of course.
Don't sit there and go, well, no, I can't call anyone yet until I've done this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
But empower yourself with the stuff that doesn't, like serve you in terms of taking up your time, actually physically making the
Mm-hmm.
calls, not having a dialer and all that kind of stuff, having data provided to you, knowing who your
Mm-hmm.
organization's ICP is, know all of
Mm-hmm.
that, but then be productive with it.
So look, in a nutshell, yes. I see a lot when I was starting a business. I see a lot of people saying like, "Oh, the important thing is showing up," and I'm like, "No, it's not. Like, I'm sorry, but if you show up and your work is shit, you're gonna get nothing out of it. So if you're
Yeah.
calling all day for a list of people that are pensioners because your list hasn't been updated in the last 20 years, you can keep showing up, but it's not going to get any effect. So I think it's important to do the work, but also so at one point figure out, hey, if I'm doing 10 conversations and I'm speaking to one relevant prospect, what am I doing? I'd rather spend the next 10 hours building a list of really relevant prospects and then rip through them rather than just, oh, well, yeah, but I still get 10% of them that are relevant. No, just don't make your life harder. That's the logic.
Yeah. And how much of that do you think sits with the organization and how much sits with the SDRs then? Because obviously, an SDR might say, well, the reason I'm not performing is because data isn't great. And so then, yeah, they can spend time researching that data. But surely a lot of the responsibility sits with the organization too, to make sure that they have all the tools in place for their SDRs so that it isn't a case of, right, come in and just do it your way. There needs to be a cadence and a process in place to make their life easier. And the organization should have researched that before they bring in the SDRs.
I think, look, I think the reality is in the middle, in the sense that you see a lot of the organizations, they're just setting up SDRs to fail. Like the amount I've got people in my academy where the sales managers is telling them like, oh, why are you doing the pitch like this? I teach them that they pay for the academy themselves, and the sales manager hasn't made a cold call in 10 years. And I'm like, dude, just shut up and let us cook, you know? So like, but on the flip side, you also have an SDR that's paid, maybe an entry level SDR can get 45K. And it's like, oh, I don't want to spend £100 a month on a dialer, or I don't want to spend £100 a month to figure out the data. I'm like, well, then you're an idiot, man. Because you're going to make like 10 times that much money if you're willing to spend a little. So that's the way I see about this.
Okay. And what are the things that if you think of AI tech, like you mentioned dialers, you mentioned data. I mean, are there other data tools? Are there other is there other hardware that dialers should be having, or SDRs, sorry, should be having as part of their arsenal that you would recommend?
Look, I think the thing we can look about this is like thinking about what buyers want, right? And we've seen an evolution of this massively over the last 30 years. And I say 30 years because that's probably roughly when real marketing as we know it is kind of born. And now buyers are more and more like, how can I say, empowered. Right. And obviously, I mean, I'm doing this webinar with you guys. We know very well what you guys do. Like, for example, if I know someone has been on my website, there's a very good chance this person is a higher intent than someone that doesn't know who I am. If someone has seen my profile on LinkedIn, same thing. So I think there's like the biggest thing that we can look at is obviously intent, which is a big word these days. People make complicated, but it's very simple. Is this person more likely to buy than someone else? That's it. And if I have any data that suggests that, then I should use that. That would be at the first level I would look at this. And then that way, the buyer is also not feeling this is a cold call because they're like, well, I want this. The simple example I always give people is like, think about it this way. If you only receive sales calls about stuff you want, you would love it. You pick up, oh, what am I buying today? Right? But it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's say so let's say we're running an ABM program, and as an SDR, your organization has said, right, here's 50 companies that we really want to get in contact with. And obviously, if you have identified that they are showing intent on the website, great. That's one thing that you could absolutely do. But how do you, like, aside from knowing those organizations would be a good fit, which your company has said, so many of them may not be in the market now. What research would you do? What tools would you use to kind of like work out, where do I start? And if you do that, how could that open more doors for you?
So look, I think the research is such a hard topic because it's really company dependent and product dependent, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's really easy to know. So let's say I am like, let's look at my services, right? Sales training services. I know for a fact if they're hiring salespeople, there's a good chance they're going to want to train them, right? I know for a fact if a new sales leader is coming into place. So I think this is some of the strongest triggers, like hiring, new job role changes, firing, all of these things are typically very strong indicators. Like anything about human resources typically is a strong indicator. And then you can obviously look at industry news, you can look at their financial reports. You know, if you sell something around debt and you realize their debt, the company's debt has been increasing the last 10 years, year on year, good chance they're going to be interested in talking to you, right? So there's a bunch of things that you can do in research, but the important thing is figuring out what are the more likely pain points and how do they show up in the prospects world. Once you know that, then you should be targeting those people relentlessly.
Yeah. And how would you use AI to influence those outreach strategies?
So look, I am at the moment still a bit skeptical with a bunch of things because I get a lot of people, oh, you know, even Clay, which is probably the some of the best AI driven market research tool you can have out there, like even AI written emails, well, Clay written emails, like a lot of them was really crap. Like instead, what I typically would look at is like try to get AI to help you build a list. So that would be the logic, like some things like Clay and work on that. And then maybe you can automate some of the research, but I would still do like the final email writing, for example, on my own. The script for sure. Like some of the guys in my academy that just try to use scripts from ChatGPT, it's like horrible. But I would say like, yeah, it's not quite there. But I think what's important is that you help them to build out a multi-channel approach. So every sales guru will tell you, oh, emails is the best, oh, cold calling is the best, oh, personal branding, whatever. The thought is that like I would typically prefer a call, or a WhatsApp. You might prefer a call or an email. Someone else might prefer a video. Someone might prefer just LinkedIn message. So you gotta reach people in as many different possible ways to get them bought into what is that you're trying to sell.
And like you said, you've got to make it personal as well. So,
Mhm.
um, yes, use AI to help you build your list. You could even use AI to give you a guidance for how you might outreach, but then every single one of those messages needs to be tailored and
Yeah,
a tailored pitch for every organization as well.
yeah. I think we can move into discussing a bit more about what should an SDR playbook look like these days. I think it would always start again. We discussed like building the list, right? So this can be done like again. If I was an SDR, I wouldn't go crazy with things like Clay or this. This is really Rev Ops type of things. But as long as you can create a list navigator and then you get the initial mobile data. Again, if you got some of the tools like you guys that can build a list of higher intent, website visitors, people that recently bought, whatever you can get that is going to give you a list, which is either there's a genuine intent. So they visited a website, they visited your LinkedIn, they liked your company page, they liked a post, whatever. Anything that's genuine intent, they clicked on an email. That's not they keep clicking on your emails. Good. So that's how you know that there's some intent. Then you have your list built out, right? So that's the first step. Then if you can't get that, then I would try to build a list based on who's your target audience. So if my target audience are, for example, my target audience are like typically SME tech companies, like from 50 to 500 employees max. It's my ideal target audience. So I will look at companies like that. I will look at companies that have got an SDR team or BDR team. So I would try this to give it as a list. So if you can't get the intent, get the likelihood of intent. So are these people likely to have the problems? It's not as good as the first one, but you'll get the job done if you can't get the first one for whatever reason, right? Then I think the first important part is like you gotta have something relevant, right, to deal with. So I'm a big fan of humorous openers just to help you stand out a little bit. Like I use would I totally ruin your day if I tell you this is a sales call and things like this. But
Yeah.
I would say, like, I don't think that's the best way to do this. I think the best way to do this is if you can prepare, you lead with something. So, for example, like my best performing hand opener of all time is, "Hey, this is a sales call, but it's a well-researched one."
Excellent.
Right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Another really good one is like, "Hey, look, I'm specifically calling you because you're on the list of 17 VP of sales that I would like to work with this year. Can you help me understand if it's relevant?" So something that was like, okay, this is not just a random sales call I'm getting, it's tailored, right? Because again, if the person thinks it's relevant, they're more likely to listen. Then the second part, and I think this is the part that almost everyone gets wrong, like 90% of the people I coach don't really have an idea. This is, what do you think is every person's favorite topic, Kirsten?
I think I know. I think every person's favorite topic is themselves.
Yes, but it's psychologically it can't be otherwise. You're you.
Yeah.
You have to be obsessed with yourself, right? So
Yeah.
and instead, most of the pitches are about what? Their salesperson,
Yeah.
themselves, right?
I would like to. I would. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this is how we can help you, blah, blah, blah. So the simplest way to really double your conversations, and I'm not saying meetings, but conversations, so you speak longer, which will lead to more meetings, is look, I'm talking to a bunch of VP of sales or whatever ICP is like you. They are working hard to fix one of these problems. And then you literally tell them, look, number one, let's say I want to do a pitch for you guys, right? It could be like, problem number one is their SDRs are calling a bunch of really cold leads and they're struggling to convert when perhaps they've got a quite good website attracting like quite a lot of traffic. Or number two is like, or maybe they are trying to target the people on the website, they visit the website, but they just are not able to really get the data that they would like from them. And so like you start to lead with two problems that they might be like, well, okay, that resonates. And if that resonates, boom, that's it. It's not cold call, it's a conversation. And that's the first step I would highlight. Then from here is once you narrow down a problem, all you really want to do is keep asking questions around the problem. Okay, can you give me an example? When you say that, what does that mean? How is that affecting the business? What does that mean for you personally? So you're digging deeper, like you want to think yourself like you're a therapist. You're trying to get to the root cause of the problem. Because the bigger the problem, the more likely they are to buy. This is like there's a famous Gartner statistics. 99% of B2B deals are closed to fix a problem. Right? So no one is going to buy, oh,
Make life better. It's to remove a pain.
yeah, it's look, as a human, a person will buy stuff for themselves they don't need. A business, unless it's run badly, won't. Because they typically have three priorities to fix max in a year, and that's all they can think about. And they won't get distracted by other stuff. Or maybe the individual decision maker might get distracted, but the boss will be like, no, dude, it's not the time for this. And then you just ended up wasting your own time, right? So yes, keep digging on that. And then obviously you're going to face objections. Then now I don't want to, obviously we don't have the time to go through every single objection, but I want to give a very simple step-by-step process. So typically what 90% of salespeople will do is argue. Like they'll be like, oh, we've got a supplier. Oh, but we're so much better, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, but we can do this, we can do that, which the person hasn't asked for, right? Imagine like you walk into a pub, someone is chatting you up, you say, I've got a husband, and they're like, oh, but I've got a six pack. I'm like, I don't care. Who gives a shit, right?
Yeah.
So my approach is very simple. First of all, no matter what they tell me, I'm going to agree with it. Like, okay, look, are you going to supply it? Great to hear. I would be surprised if you didn't. And then the second mistake is then you're then going to go into but, which is yes, but, right? And think about this with your partner, right? Like, how well does it go when you're trying to give him some feedback and all of a sudden he goes, yeah, but, and you just get angrier.
You didn't
right?
listen. Yes.
Yeah, because like you're not listening to me. So I agree. I make them sure I really hear it, and then I'm going to be like, look, can I ask a question about that? Which disarms them further. So agreement, disarmament, and then I'm going to just ask a question. So when you say you've got a supplier, does that mean you never going to look at a different one? Or when you say you've got a supplier, does that mean everything is perfect? or maybe even more driven. So when you say you've got a supplier for this, does that mean that you don't face, and then you're gonna dig deeper in something that you know you can do better than
No
than the
problems.
average, right?
Yeah.
And so this way, like what I'm doing, I'm trying to get the person to think. I'm not trying myself to persuade them, but get them to persuade themselves, which I think is
Yeah.
what should be done.
Yeah. I love that idea of, does that mean, especially relating to some of the, if you've got a solution, product or service that solves a number of pains, you know, and they've got a supplier, asking questions around, well, does that mean you never have this, or you don't suffer from that anymore, and reminding them of the pains, and then almost questioning, well, does the solution I've got do everything that I need? And then,
Yes,
like you say, then they've got them
yes.
questioning. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. What you're trying to find the chink in the armor. And that's the
Yeah.
reason why cold calling is so effective, because if you're emailing someone about this, you can't get the feedback. So you're
No.
not able to perceive, is there a weakness that I can hammer on? Instead, most of the time, if you get an objection by email, it's game over.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. Done. Right. And
Yeah.
then you just can't. So when the call,
Yeah.
you can. And that's why cold
Yeah.
calling works.
Well, yeah,
And then,
exactly. So, but part of that, I guess, multi-channel approach. So you will still email, you will still connect on LinkedIn, but this is and those should warm up the call. They should get them ready
yeah,
for a
yeah.
call. But the call is ultimately the bit where you are gonna solicit feedback, because they will be in a conversation with you,
Mhm,
whereas an email is not a
mhm,
conversation, it's a one way
mhm,
until
mhm,
like you open it up.
mhm. Absolutely.
Okay, so
Look, just to tie this up, because obviously, like some people will say, "Oh, like just focus on the one channel," which is nonsense. I think when we're discussing like emails and DMs, I think they definitely work. People booked more meetings with me by DMing than by calling me. I think it's because people are scared of calling me, first of all, for some reason, because they think, oh, fuck, what is he going to say if the call is not great? But I booked meetings from DMs. And I think like the crucial part there is thinking that you gotta be like, think about it yourself, right? When you receive a cold email, typically you're gonna look for two things. Is it relevant? And can I read it quickly? And I think so many people get this wrong, because they'll write this. I receive emails like this. I literally don't even read it. Well, if you see something
yeah,
that's very to scan, I'm gonna look at it. So emails or DMs, like, so for DMs, I got my own strategy. We'll talk in a second. But for emails, I would typically just focus on the one problem and provide a little bit of social proof, right? If I wanted to write an email for you guys, it'd be something like, hey, look, I do you sometimes feel that you've got a bunch of website visitors that you're just not converting into new meetings? For example, and then I would put like, we've helped companies similar to you, and they now increase the pipeline by 23%. And then the thing I do differently from most is that I'm not then going to say up for a chat, 15 minutes, whatever. I'm just going to say, I'm going to call you tomorrow.
nice.
So I get them to, and then sometimes they'll reply like, well, no, don't call me tomorrow because I can't. Perfect, done. Right.
Yeah,
But I'm just feeding this into the multi-channel sequence, basically.
yeah.
Well, for DMs, I've been trying a completely different approach, and it works. And it's stupid, but I just send memes. I
Okay.
just like I just pick a meme. Like I've got one of my best performing ones. I don't know if you ever seen it. Is like the the pool one where there's like someone take. Hang on, let me. I think I can show it to you. I got it somewhere.
Intrigued now.
So sorry.
I said I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's like look. The thing is like, especially I would say it works better if you're targeting mainly the what do you call it, like millennials. So maybe if you're targeting a
Yeah.
boomer, I mean, it's going to be a little bit harder. But if your target audience is like up to 50 years old, they typically will resonate to some extent. And I just really get quite good ones. So for example, this is, yeah, just going to quickly share my screen. This is what I use, actually. Yeah. And it's just like, and you can do this for anything you sell. And I'm just going to send it. We're not like I say, hey, is this you? And then, like people respond because I don't do this by email because the attachments, they don't get delivered, blah, blah. But this via DM, fantastic. WhatsApp as well. I do exactly the same. Like, and one final tip is like when someone ghosts me, I typically send either Kermit, like looking outside, or Pablo Escobar waiting, and then just without any context, just that's that. And then people will respond to it.
And you've connected because you've created an emotion in them, a human emotion, which is they've laughed or they've and they realise that it's a human on the other end of the conversation rather than just I'm connecting with everybody. Yeah, yeah. I mean that makes complete sense. And would you even try that on like colder outreach with a
Oh yeah.
DM? Like, yeah, you would.
Yeah, like
Okay.
I've done this with 100% cold, like, and yeah, like I think the first time I tried it, I sent 10 and 4 people responded. And one booked a meeting. So it was pretty crazy, but I can't say I've scaled it enough. But I definitely think it's about something different. That's why also video works really well.
Well, that was literally my next question is going to be what do you think of video on DMs? Because like I've seen that being leveraged really well and like huge response rates.
Look, also the thing with video is that it's very hard to like it's about how much time is the person spending. So if they feel wow, this person really put a lot of effort, they're more likely to respond even if they're not interested. Which some people will say, well, but I don't give a shit. So if they're not interested, what's the point? Well, but that person is more likely to be responding to a later outreach when this will be relevant. So I think this maybe one of the tips for the SDRs is like all of the best performing SDRs I know, without a fail, they will book 30 to 50% of their pipeline from follow-up calls. This is why the first few months as an SDRs are so hard because booking on the first call is not easy. On the first outreach is not easy. But they're like, oh, it's not relevant now, but you keep chasing them and then eventually it will be relevant and then you catch them in the right window.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose that is it, isn't it? If you know their ICP, it's playing the long game and nurturing your pipeline. I think that's the other reason that everything has changed because it was, it before ICPs and knowing, we need to retain these businesses that we win. We would go, okay, well, those 100 weren't interested. Where's the next 100? There's next 100. But now we don't have tens of thousands of businesses that are great for our product. There is a finite amount, so we've got to look after them. And so as SDRs, we've got to learn to nurture and build relationships as well as being confident enough to make that initial outreach.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if we talk about then, I was going to say moving beyond the SDR playbook and into, okay, I understand what I need to do with my pitch. I understand how I build my database, the criteria of the organizations. I understand research and how I can make myself more productive. How is an SDR going to turn that cold data into warm conversations?
Okay, so look, this is obviously the hard part, right? Because from cold to warm conversation, that there are a bunch of ways of doing this. I think nurturing, obviously, the multi-channel approach. Like this is a very simple, basic line. Is like, for example, I like to do what I call it's like a like 4 touch points as a start, which means like I'm gonna call you. If you don't pick up, I'm gonna leave a voicemail, which will point to me sending you an email and a LinkedIn connection request. So what I've done is like in the space of 2 minutes, you're gonna see my name in 4 different areas, right? And then that builds familiarity, which means eventually they'll start to think this is not a randomer, this is someone that I recognize the name, and that's enough for the brain to already move you into a slightly better category. So that's the level 1, and then obviously the level 2 is what we discussed earlier, which is the really high level of research, intent, etc. And I think with this, like, there's a bunch of options you can have out there, but I think obviously, like, you guys probably can talk a little bit about how that's going to be relevant for the businesses.
I mean, like from a lead forensics perspective, I think we are just all about making the SDR's life easier. And we know that, I'm a marketer. I've done sales as well. I've done both, love both. But I also know that as marketers, we will invest a ton in driving traffic to our website. Like it is, it's our shop window. It's the place where a buyer goes, beginning, middle, end of the customer journey. And I also know that maybe 2% of them, best case scenario, will actually give me a call. I also know that they're there because they've potentially got a problem. So, our SDRs, our SDRs for customers, we just see that data as a great way of empowering the SDRs to be more productive. So buyers unfortunately spend so much time researching your competitors before they will pick up the phone. In fact, nowadays, like they won't speak to a salesperson until they probably educated themselves to about 80% of the way there. If you can get in on that conversation, then you can be part of that education, not just to say, here's why our tool's better, but here's all the other things that you could consider, and here's how we could guide you forward. And so lead forensics is just about identifying those buyers who are leaving signals. They're showing you they've got a problem. You can even see what they looked at, where they are on the website that will help you with that conversation. But to an SDR who is used to calling through data without a connection, without any insight, it's a gift. So we say do both, but it is a great way to really empower the SDRs to make better calls, basically. So I think that's, it's not warming the pipeline because the pipeline has created itself. That's leveraging it. Like, warm calling versus cold calling. We need to do both because, we really, we're all about growth, but spend your time on the more effective stuff first, please. It'll make your life so much easier. And a lot of our team cut their teeth on cold, and then they moved to the hotter data from lead forensics, and they're like, oh my gosh, where has this been all my life?
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. So that's one thing that we use, but obviously our SDRs do similar. We'll use AI, we use Clay, we use tools to empower our SDRs to create a good cadence so they have a route to follow. We've got sales loft, etc. So there's loads of things you can use. And obviously we're going to bang the drum about lead forensics, but I'm sure you're in the same situation. There's tons of other things, but why not, if that buyer is leaving signs and signals, take advantage of it?
Of course. I mean, look, it's always, the way I put this is like, imagine it's like you're single, you walk into a bar and you can tell the people that are also single, right? It's just that, literally that simple. Like if someone is visiting my website, if someone is expressing a specific signal of something, there's a higher chance they're going to be wanting to do this. Like, for example, one of my triggers, I don't really do much of warm calling, but if you send me a connection request on LinkedIn and you're an ICP, I don't accept until I've spoken to you. I'll call you until I've spoken to you. Because again, I know it's going to be more likely that you're going to be interesting. Which kind of leads us to the last point with this is like, I just want to kind of clarify for salespeople that the personal branding thing. So there's a lot of hype about personal branding. As someone who's got a very strong personal brand, I'm arguably one of the most famous people in the cold calling niche, I would say. And obviously this gets inbound leads. It's nice. What the problem I see with a lot of the hype around personal branding is that if you're a salesperson, unless you sell to salespeople, which is what I do, right? Or sales leaders, and then you produce content around sales, you need to be producing content about the niche which you sell. So if you sell to cybersecurity leaders, you need to produce cybersecurity content, which you, first of all, you're probably not very qualified to do. Let's be honest, because you're not going to know that much compared to it. And secondly, as a salesperson, your life cycle, especially at the beginning of your career, is probably 1 to 3 years. So if you're an SDR, you're thinking posting a bunch of like things about on LinkedIn is going to help. It could do if you do it not as a distraction, but it's not necessarily going to be something that's so easy to translate to a place to another. So I've seen some SDRs do really well. They document their journey, etc., but they still mainly get seen by commercial people. So this, if you then don't sell to commercial people, this will not be getting you better clients. So it's just something that I want to make it clear. It's like, it's great. It's a fantastic tool. It's better to have one than not to have one. But unless you're selling to salespeople or to marketing within your own area, you might be building a personal brand that you will not be able to use in the longer term. So that's the only thing around it. I'm a big advocate for it, but you need to be strategic with what you're going to do because it's hard, it's time consuming, and you're going to want to quit many times. And realistically, if you then build one and then you move niche, you're going to be like, fuck, what have I done?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess if you are building a personal brand, the one area it will help you is in your future career.
Yeah.
You know, like do it for those reasons, but if you're going to move into different segments and sectors, you can't be an expert in every space.
Exactly.
So yeah, really think about that before you invest. Okay, so predictions for 2026.
Yeah,
Where are
let's
you
wrap this
seeing
up.
the role of the SDR heading?
So look, the first thing that I believe in that what's going to change is what we discussed in an AI-driven world, which is where we're heading. This is, if you think so, if you think otherwise, it's pointless. It's like the industrial revolution on steroids. Period. This is not. It is a bigger change than from the horse to the car for people that want to think about it in that way. I believe that all the things that are low level will be gone, which means that cold calling, prospecting, they'll become a more targeted and higher value thing. So the lower level prospecting, so for low value leads, and by low value, I mean anything below $5-10K is very likely to become automated, to become ads driven, like posts, whatever. I think what the role of the prospecting is going to be more and more to get higher quality and higher level leads. So what this means is like the spray and pray will die completely. It's going to become completely pointless, and it's going to be more and more about not maybe making $100 a day, but making 30. But every single one of those dials, you're going to know exactly what you're going to tell them and why. So that's what I see. On the flip side, what I think is going to be very good is that the one part the AI seems to be struggling with the most, and even the best predictions still say it's going to struggle, is the human emotions, human interactions. So it's going to be very hard for AI to replicate that, which means unless we get to a point where AI sells to AI, which we might do, up until that point, a human will want to speak to a human. And so the ability to have the human conversation will still be very good. So I think if you're an SDR and you want to develop the human conversation skills as much as possible, which is what might not be cold calling, might be warm calling, might be discovery calls, doesn't matter. But the ability of handling objections, asking the right questions, this will never go away. And that's, I think, what people should be focusing on.
Okay. And skills wise then it's developing this, which ultimately I suppose are leading towards a career in sales anyway, which is where a lot of SDRs want to go. So the SDRs is like the entry point. You work your way up and you go into sales. Do you think, depending on I mean, obviously all B2B, some buyers are very logical in their approach and they might be happy to complete the whole customer journey through tech or AI. Others, especially big ticket items, like there is an emotional, there's, you're a buyer, you don't want to get stung, you want to make the right decision. So having someone that you trust on the other
Mm-hmm.
end of that phone, I think
Mm-hmm.
is really important. You know, right, okay, the sales process is gonna guide me, it's going to inform me, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to give me everything that I need,
Mm-hmm.
means they're more likely to choose you than if they're having to self-serve.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that for
Correct.
businesses that move away from having SDRs, that's also a concern because
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of us who wouldn't buy anything without having a human connection.
Absolutely. And that's where I think it's gonna be lying the like hunting those skills is what's the best time investment.
Yeah. And what's one piece of advice that you would give to SDRs? Like we're coming into Q4 now.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
expected to go like this.
Mm-hmm.
We call December the most wonderful time of the year, particularly in our solution because it's budgets time. You know, we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the one piece of advice that you would give to SDRs to end 2025 on a high?
I mean, look, I think there's a one of my favorite self-development books is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and
That one,
I think
yeah.
it's not yeah the number seven is like sharpen the saw and which kind of ties with what we discussed so far. So I think relook at your system, relook at how you do things. I don't think people take enough care of this. Like, and this would be like, are your emails good? Is your list good? Is your script decent? And before maybe you go on to a further sprint, if so far things haven't worked that well, then figure out what hasn't and improve it. So really a self-analysis and trying to get that right. And then you once you find what's the weakest area I've got, okay, the weakest area is like no one ever replies to my emails, work on better emails. A bunch of people are gap on me, okay, probably the opener isn't good. Then or like most of the people are not relevant, your list sucks. So just focus on the one thing and improve it. And then you're always gonna have then what's the second thing that doesn't work? And then this way you're eventually gonna get to a very highly functioning sales process, even as an SDR or as a sales leader. So that's what I recommend a lot of people to do.
Yeah, makes sense. And what and sales leaders, is there anything that our sales leaders should be doing to support their teams better in that final quarter?
I mean, look, with sales leaders, it can be a little bit harsher in the sense that the amount of the amount of training they do, where like with companies where the sales leaders hasn't done a piece of training in years, they're not coaching their teams, they're not looking at new tech, and they're not building lists for them. So there's so many things that you can do really like okay, the simplest way to put this is you pay an SDR. So let's say the lowest salary, the lowest level, you pay them 30K a year, right? With expenses, that's like 35K it costs you per year, everything included, plus commissions, etc. So that's like 3K a month. And you might not get something that costs £100 a month, 200, that will get them to perform 20% better. And I'm like, do the fucking maths. It's just that simple. Like you could like then or sack your worst SDR and reinvest that to make the other ones better. It's that simple, right? So
Yeah,
I think you just sitting there doing the maths right is what I would recommend.
yeah, makes sense. Listen, Giulio, it has been really insightful as always. I've already got, particularly on the objections and the openers for emails, some great stuff that I know I can take away and that our team will listen to this and take away too. Thank you for joining us. I hope we can have you on again soon.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.